Bonnie delays its weakening phase, and that's still the highlight of the world today on this tropical weather bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for July 8th. So, Hurricane Bonnie surviving longer and even intensifying a little bit. We have it down as a Category 2 at this point. Borderline case. And Subtropical Storm Aere still holding on off the coast of Japan and could still have a bit of a future left in it yet. Interesting times. Unclassified on the TICO score right now on day 38 of Atlantic hurricane season, where we have no areas of interest right now. So another surprise there maybe for those who are expecting the Atlantic to be bustling by now. You'll have to wait a little bit longer. The Eastern Pacific shows much more activity. Bonnie there in the Eastern Pacific out to sea. A 70% chance behind it and a small area of interest that could develop towards the end of the 5-day period there off the Central American coast. So maybe some more storms on the way. Western Pacific, Chaba is still traceable over North Korea, and Subtropical Storm Aere well off the coast of Japan on the same latitude as Tokyo. Another area of interest now popping up near the Philippines over the next 5 days. It's an uncertain situation, so we'll have to watch that one closely. Indian Ocean remains quiet at this juncture, and the rest of the world same too. Nothing active and nothing expected. But I guess what we've got in the Pacific is enough for us to go on right now. So here's a close-up on Bonnie, and you can see that earlier today the satellite appearance really took a turn for the better, although in more recent frames you'll note now that it is starting to weaken once again. Eye still quite apparent there on that imagery and looking pretty decent on the whole, but it will start to weaken more substantially, we think, in the next 24 to 48 hours. I say we think because we said that last time. But it looks like it will weaken for good now. Let's look at satellite imagery of the whole of the Atlantic then, or the western part of it. You can just about make out the eastern areas there. And this is what we're looking at right now. Generally a fairly quiet picture. Little frontal system pushing off the US East Coast. And a lot of storms over the US once again today. A general, not much organization, but a lot of storminess are going on in the central US. Eastern Pacific, you can again see that area of interest behind Hurricane Bonnie, which is pushing on into drier and drier air and cooler sea surface temperatures. That wave behind it has a decent chance of forming, probably not in the next couple of days, but later on in the 5-day period. Western Pacific, there's a decent looking wave or two over there in the tropical zone. Further north, there's that massive area surrounding Subtropical Storm Aere, but further south things might be starting to warm up in the not too distant future. Looking towards the North Indian Ocean region there, I know the imagery keeps cutting off unfortunately, but convection blowing up along the Indian east coast, but generally a very quiet scene, certainly nothing that's out of the ordinary. Monsoonal pattern in play. Australian region and the South Pacific also very quiet. I want to point out there's a frontal system just south of French Polynesia pushing through that you can't see on this imagery, and also the other one that's now affecting the eastern part mainly of New Zealand. So let's take a look at sea surface temperatures today, and you can see how they are changing only modestly compared to yesterday, and you'll note there that where Bonnie is right now, it's probably just riding that 26 degree isotherm, about to drop off very soon. The Atlantic Ocean warming up nicely. Gulf of Mexico very warm, 28 degrees commonplace, 30 degrees too, and once again that Gulf Stream pushing out a good deal up the off the US eastern seaboard. Indian Ocean not looking too bad. Arabian Sea much cooler on the western side from the winds that occur there, and the Western Pacific looking like this, a little bit cooler around the coast of China after Chaba, and also cooler around the Okinawa Islands and the Amami Islands off Japan. But still very warm temperatures across the Western Pacific, Philippine Sea particularly, and you just look way out to sea. Very, very warm waters up to latitudes of around 25 to 30 degrees north. So very warm conditions there. And you'll notice subtropical in the Pacific zone. The subtropical Pacific, I should say, is very much above average. The La Nina still somewhat present in the Eastern Pacific tropical zone, and in the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico much above average, and most of the basin that matters is as well. It's the eastern northeastern Atlantic that's a little bit below. Oceanic heat content right now shows the Gulf of Mexico on fire with the loop current, and in the Western Caribbean also prime right now for significant development. Looking at peripheral areas there, also starting to perk up. Western Pacific as well, extending up to the latitude of Taiwan, starting to get some decent amounts of oceanic heat content. Eastern Pacific is still pretty dead, although it is just a sign of life there along the coast of Mexico. Looking at computer models right now, first of all we look at the Atlantic, again at this long range, well, towards the end of the 5-day period. The big frontal system pushes along off the US East Coast, and GFS keeps hinting that it might produce a tropical cyclone along the way. Low chance right now, so low in fact that it's not been designated by anyone, but we'll keep watching that just in case it pulls a little trick up its sleeve. We know what the Atlantic basin's like, very sneaky. A look across the Eastern Pacific at this time, and you'll see what's going on here. Unfortunately, I can't comment much on this because I can't actually see what's being displayed, such as the wonders of the software I currently use, which has decided not to show what we're supposed to be looking at. But I can tell you that Bonnie dies off, the next system forms behind it in that 5-day period, and you may get a glimpse just on the eastern area near the Central American coastline of that third system. And here's a close-up of the Western Pacific, which once again I'm going off memory. You'll see that subtropical storm, keep making that mistake, Aere moves up the coast of Japan and could still become tropical before affecting northern Honshu or Hokkaido. The remnants of Chaba barely visible in that imagery, and I think you might get a view there of the what's left or what's to come near the Philippines towards the end of the 5-day period. GFS currently hinting at a fairly weak and small tropical storm. And here is what we're expecting rain-wise around Japan and around northeastern China, some of which is still associated with Chaba, not very much. As far as Aere is concerned, I think we're looking at something like 5 inches of rain still to come for parts of Japan, maybe a little bit more than that, it's around 125 millimeters of rain. Same too for the areas in China, although most of that now is not going to be related to Aere, it will be related to probably just the frontal system that's moving through, certainly a low pressure producing rain. Into the longer range, day 5 through day 10, looking across the Atlantic Ocean once again. No, we're not, we're looking at the Eastern Pacific on this one. You can see what transpires with those storms. The second one, the corona currently 70%, is one that we're keeping an eye on, of course. Chances are it will probably become a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific. We tend to get this kind of pattern in early July, particularly, really the prime of an Eastern Pacific hurricane season, if you ask me. And that third system, which I think tries to develop, but I can't remember what it actually shows. And the Western Pacific at this point showing that system moving into southern China as a tropical storm. Again, that's long range, and we could be dealing with something completely different by the time we get there. This is a particularly low confidence forecast in the Western Pacific. We know that the GFS model and other models have been calling for very strong typhoons to come out of this system, and for completely different tracks that could take it towards Japan still, so keep watching closely. At this point, that's all the serious stuff done, and you can take a look at our Force 13 merch store. Scan the barcode there, it will take you there, and we've got plenty of merch products available, and you can also request animations on there as well. Into the silly range, I don't know if it's showing up on this imagery. Knowing my luck tonight, it probably isn't. It's showing in the Eastern Pacific a system that forms towards the very end of the loop, day 10 to 16 basically, which is this period, and going on to affect western Mexico. A weak tropical storm by the looks of things, maybe weak to moderate, and then it dies off pretty quickly over there as well. I don't think that showed on the imagery. What can I do? So yeah, well, anyway, on July 8th 2002, on this date, we had Shatan, which was a category 4 and looking very nice on that imagery there. Halong had just formed as well in the open western Pacific near the Micronesian Islands, and also Tropical Depression 11 was just forming off the coast of southern China, headed for Taiwan. What a day it was over there in the western Pacific, very busy times, and Shatan had already caused significant issues over in Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands before it got to this point. So after that calamitous time with the models, let's take a look at what we've got coming up next in the Atlantic Ocean. It's Danielle, the next name on the list. In the Eastern Pacific, we'll be looking out for Darby, and in the Central Pacific, we're still waiting on Hone. I should mention on Sunday it's 1,000 days since we've been waiting for Hone, and we're doing a special Force 13 Sundays for that as well. Songda is next in the Western Pacific, and in the North Indian Ocean it's Sitrang. So far this year we have had 34 storms, which means that on average we've still got a good 60 or so to go. In the Australian region, the next name is Darian. Southwest Indian Ocean's first name will be Ashley, and in the South Pacific we're looking out for Harley. That's all for tonight. We'll have another tropical weather bulletin, hopefully with less errors, tomorrow night.